Alright guys, I've been promising you this video for a long time, so it's finally here, talking about mobility. Basically people call flexibility. I hate the word flexible. I can get into that later, and I always just call it mobility. And it's basically getting the body to move the way that it's supposed to move. Getting your joints and your muscles to the point where they're functioning properly. When they're not functioning properly, that's when we run into injuries. I know that within this group, myself included, we've had issues with hip, with IT band, knees, ankles, there's a whole range of things. The body's made to move, it's made to run, but when we have stuff that's tight or muscles that are restricted, when you run, because it's such a repetitive use exercise, if anything's out of whack, if anything's tight, if anything's not functioning properly, not moving the way it's supposed to, that's when you get injuries. But oftentimes where the spot that hurts is not what's causing the problem. So if you have a pain in your knee, a lot of times it's going to be from a tight muscle either below or above the knee, what we call up and down the kinetic chain. Kinetic chain is basically your feet all the way through your head. I've heard some people call it up and down the river. Look above and below where the injury site is. So if your knee is bothering you, it's a good chance your hip is really tight, and it's kind of pulling your leg out of alignment, or it's making the knee sort of drift in, and then you maybe have a piece of fascia or ligament that's rubbing up against the bone, and obviously it's going to hurt like hell. That's sort of what IT band syndrome is. You can have a sore knee underneath the kneecap. A lot of people call that runner's knee, but a lot of that just comes from restriction maybe in the hip flexor, or on the outside back of the hip, which is going to cause that knee pain only because your knee then becomes out of alignment. It's not aligned properly, you're not running properly. Or it can be something below. It can be in the ankle, it can be in the calf, it could be some kind of tightness that again throws the body out of its alignment. The body is engineered perfectly, but things need to work properly. We have great alignment when things are working the way they're supposed to. The joints are where they're supposed to be. The muscles are functioning the way they're supposed to be. You can exercise and go out and really push yourself and be pain-free. However, because of the lifestyle that we live, there are very few of us who are pain-free. We have a lot of restrictions from sitting, just from age, all these things. So we can combat that stuff. So I'm going to start with the hip today. Next video I do will focus on the ankle. Ankle and hip, to me, the two biggest things, especially with runners. You can just do a little bit and it goes a long way if you just concentrate on doing the mobility, stay on top of those things. I think it's going to be a long way to kind of prevent some of those nagging injuries, some of those repetitive use injuries that come along. I'm basically going to show you two mobility exercises with this and kind of show you a couple different variations. And the reason I think this is a perfect setup to film it here in the hotel room is because I'm going to use a chair, going to use the floor, and this stuff is perfect to do when you're in your living room. If you're watching TV, you're hanging out after dinner with the family, the kids are playing, they're on the floor, they're reading, doing whatever, you can just kind of hang out with them, you can be there, you can be watching TV, you can do these exercises virtually anywhere. So let's talk about the hip at first. So the hip, basically there's three parts you're going to work on when you're doing mobility for the hip. The front of the hip, which is the hip flexor, which basically raises the knee, raises that up, and you have muscles that attach from literally the spine, cross over the hip, and attach to the front of your thigh. And those can get super tight. We can talk later more about form, and when hip flexors get too involved in running, this really kind of gets sore and gnarly and really aggravated. So we're going to work on the hip flexor, and we're going to work on the side of the hip. I mentioned the IT band. The IT band is basically just a long band of fascia. Fascia is like that, if you've ever cut a steak and you have that weird white stuff that you can't really get through with a knife, that's fascia. It's just connective tissue, super, super strong. And we have a giant band, that's what the IT band is, that runs along the side of your leg. Attaches to your knee, basically attaches to your hip on a fan-shaped muscle right there. And we can work on the muscles that go around the joint on the side. And then we're also going to work on muscles of the hip, which really kind of your butt underneath the glute max, which is the big butt muscle, the glute med, the glute min, two minor, smaller muscles that attach kind of from the hip. They wrap around, they attach to what you call your sit bones on the back of the hip there, your pelvis, and they attach also to the top of the femur, up top, like basically where some of your hamstring muscles come in right there. And these can get super tight and gnarly, especially if you sit a lot like we all do. And So basically we want to work on loosening up those muscles, keep everything kind of functioning properly, have a proper range of motion, and that way when we're running, we can hopefully avoid some of those nagging injuries. So we're going to start on the ground, and you want to plant your foot. Make sure you get a good solid base on your foot. Whenever you're planting your foot, I always think of making 3 dots. You got a dot behind the pinky toe, dot behind your big toe, and a dot directly in the center of your heel. You want to really equally distribute your weight across those 3 dots, form a good hard arch in your foot, and that's going to be your base. So get that base in your foot, put your hand literally over your foot and lock that down, and then just kind of sink into your hip. Don't let that foot lift up, but let your knee, let your leg kind of drift out to the side. Think of it as your leg bone sinking into the hip socket, and then you want to let the leg fall out from there. So you're not really forcing your knee to the side. You're really thinking about this whole bone, the whole top of your leg drifting out. And you should feel that a little bit on the inside. You're going to feel it on the outside, and just kind of lean, move around, kind of look for spots, hunt for spots that hurt. So as I do this, I have a really tight spot in the back. So I'm going to lean myself back, lean my weight into that spot, let my leg fall out a little bit more. Make sure I keep that foot locked down solid on the ground, using the hand to keep that foot from moving, and really just kind of move around and just let that hip joint loosen up, open up. You can do that just like 30 seconds, and then obviously switch legs, do it to the other side. You can do that with your foot elevated. So take like an ottoman, footrest, a low chair, whatever, same deal. You just want to get your foot locked down solid. You can hold it with your hand, and again, just kind of lean, look for those spots, let that leg fall out to the side, bring it back in, kind of get low, just kind of loosen everything up. Right now, actually I get a little bit of stretch on my side here, what I always refer to as my side fat, and just kind of stretch, and that'll open it all up, and all that's great. You want to open all that up. From here, you also can kind of, if you do yoga at all, if you're familiar with pigeon pose, just kind of get into a modified pigeon, get that leg raised up. And right now, that's like killer on the back. Some of those smaller muscles around your butt, around your hip. And just kind of lean and just hunt for those spots that really hurt. You find a spot that's really sore, just stop, breathe into it. Big breath out. Another one. Just kind of sink into those spots. You find something that really hurts, just sink your body weight into it. And the third one you can do with this, and it actually would work better with if you had a higher chair or like a stool, you actually can put your foot up, stand on your other leg, and kind of do that same thing. It's all that same motion. You kind of hunt for those spots. This is probably a bit too high, but you can do a pigeon pose on a chair that are a little bit lower, and just, again, you feel that when you open up here, really gets the hip, the butt, those muscles, they'll loosen up. Next thing I'm going to show you is for the hip flexor, the front of the hip. You can take a pillow, you can take a towel, fold it up. There's a couple different ways that you can do this. So you can, like I said, do this in your living room, you're watching TV, put a pillow down on the ground, put your foot on the cushion part of the couch, and you should feel a stretch down the front of your leg into that hip. You want to get a little bit more, get your arm up over your head, and then you can lean. And when you lean, think about pointing directly straight out from that hip bone. So I want to point that hip bone straight all the way that way. So I'm going to lean to the side, point that hip bone, and you can make sure you're up tall. You don't want to arch your back way back. You want to stay good and tight. Squeeze the glute, squeeze your butt on the side of the leg and the foot that's up. So even if you try to think about pulsing your butt, just try to flex it, and that will increase the stretch even more. The other one you can do that's great for this is called the couch stretch, because you do it on your couch. Same type of deal. So literally, you're watching TV, you're on the couch, you just jam your knee into the crease between the cushion and the back of the couch, get your leg up, on the backrest part of the couch and just lean. And you can kind of move forward, get that arm up over your head, sort of move a little bit side to side. You're really gonna feel that stretch front of the quad and then front of the hip flexor muscles. That's a great way. So literally, if you do this, like I said, 30 seconds, you know, say you're doing it on the ground, do 30 seconds one leg, 30 seconds the other, go 30 seconds, stretch the front on this one, stretch the front on this, and then maybe go through that second time. That's literally, you know, 5 minutes, less than, you know, 10 minutes. You do that every single night. I think you're gonna find it makes a huge difference with keeping you kind of loose, maybe helping to prevent some of those nagging injuries that pop up. So this is the first one. Hoping to do a lot more of these videos. We'll talk about running stride. We'll talk about strength specific for running. We'll talk about more mobility stuff. But this is number one, and I promise I'll be getting you guys more. All right, take care.